Hello, good afternoon, welcome to this session. We had one speaker, one panelist drop out at the 11th hour and 59th minute, but be that as it may, the quality will make up for the smaller quantity we have. So let me start by introducing the panel. Okay, just give me a minute. I just wanted to look at my notes. Yeah. Yeah, the panelists will introduce themselves. I'll introduce myself first. So I'm Executive Education Senior Fellow at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And I have earlier been the Director of the National Institute of Urban Affairs in New Delhi, which is India's leading think and do tank for urban policy. And I was deeply involved with the National Urban Renewal Mission, as well as the reframing of the master plan for Delhi. More immediately, I've also been in the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And as you may perhaps know, for the new cycle of the IPCC, which is going to be the 7th assessment, one of the co-chairs of the working group is Winston Chow, a professor at SMU. And what's really relevant in this context of this session is that the IPCC is doing a special report on cities. So that goes to the very heart of sustainable cities. So that's my sort of claim to fame to be here. And then I will pass on the mics to Joanna and to Greg to introduce themselves.
Thanks so much, Shreekant. Hi, my name is Joanna Yeo. I am the CEO and founder of Arukah Capital. We are a Singapore-based carbon credit developer. We're focused on waste to energy and carbon removal projects. We've started in agriculture waste in emerging markets in the region. Southeast Asia, 50% of the emissions comes from agriculture. But the interesting thing is that it's starting to lead us towards cities because a lot of these emerging markets are also building a lot of infrastructure. And one of the core products that we produce is biochar. And we are now starting to look at biochar and concrete. We also produce biogas, which can be converted to clean energy. My background before this spans data science and capital markets. And I've been working on sustainable reporting, including for real estate, all the way from 2012, and incorporating it systematically into different types of asset classes. So looking forward to this conversation.
Joanna, thanks very much. So my name is Greg Mittman, and I'm originally from telecom. So I founded a company called My Republic here locally, and I really fell in love with the approach that the regulator took to reframe and recast the industry. They used a PPP to establish the national broadband network, and I really fell in love with that, and that really was the genesis of My Republic. About a year ago, I moved into climate and founded a company called HySights with the benefit of the EDB. They have something called the CVL program, the Corporate Venture Program, where they pair up companies with founders to launch new companies, and they have a climate bent in particular. So I'm the CEO and founder of HySights. We've been going for about 6 months now. We have capital from an industrial company. And our job is, the problem statement is there's lots of money announced for industrial decarbonization projects, but very few projects proceed to FID. Very few projects proceed to get funding. And our belief is that's because there's a data problem. So we have launched a rating agency for the rating, the ex-ante rating, so the pre-funding rating of those industrial projects, new energy projects, which we define as low carbon gases and biofuels, as well as carbon capture. It's great to be here today, and thanks very much. Look forward to this. Thank you.
Okay, so the way we'll do this is I'll start with Joanna with some questions and then go to Greg. Then we'll open the floor for the audience. There's a particular structured way in which you have to post your questions. And then eventually we'll circle back to the three of us for closing remarks. So we have a good amount of time since, as I've already mentioned, one of our speakers is not here. So by the way, if you came to listen to her or her background, she's been a very important environmental whistleblower and sort of was a whistleblower for greenwashing of a very large firm. So be that as it may, let me first start with you, Joanna. So a very broad generic question is, of course, about strategies to decarbonize the urban environment. But I think the more interesting part is, since we are in FinTech, we are looking at the intersection of innovation in sustainability and innovation in FinTech. And I think you had some, had some interesting observations there. So I would basically ask you to perhaps dwell on, the idea about green reporting, digitization, and, how if you merge the two, it could be a cost saving. So that would be my first point to you. And then, for example, we are now talking about sustainability of cities, so we are also talking about the built environment. So in the built environment, again, this idea of green finance and automation, how that plays out, because the urban environment is already sort of up and running with some of these ideas. So if you could elaborate on those, and of course, feel free to do this longer, because we'll do this a bit more organically because we have a lot of time.
Thanks so much, Shreekant. And maybe I'll start the answer to that kind of building from where Greg left off, where he was talking about the importance of data. So my last company before setting this current company up, and I'll just quickly run through what my current company does. So we are putting in very metered processes into measured, engineered carbon credit development. So what that allows us to do, so it's called this thing called digital measurement reporting and verification. What that allows you to do is to make sure there's high quality, verifiable, and high frequency data. So I think I'd preface the question about green data in finance with a general context that this is something that actually has been dealt with before in other segments. If we think about what happened with the mortgage-backed crisis, that happened because there were structures that were built on 6-month-old Excel spreadsheets, and then people were building structures on top of it, and a lot of liquidity was coming in. The problem with that is the quality of the structuring. Like, the weakest link is the quality of the data. And I think that's where we find ourselves today in the green space. There is a lot of interest. So my company has engaged with over 60 financiers globally that collectively have about $1 trillion in capital committed to sustainable finance. At this point, most of them can only really find it actionable to finance something like a wind farm or a green building, because they understand the credit quality and the marginal risk around what is being measured is it's like more minimal. So I'd start with that preface, which is that the problem we're facing in the green space is not something that has not been faced before. So in the spirit of being at Singapore FinTech Festival, it's solvable. And I want to applaud all of you out there who are involved in solving this. The second point is, why is this really important? And I think coming down to why we need data and what digitization can do. So I'd share it with Shreekant. So before this company I founded, I was on the early executive team of this company called Bigger Technologies. And Bigger Technologies has now done over $16 billion in regulated financial services on blockchain. Our starting point was really that it really comes down to the quality of data. So one of our advisors was Sheila Bair, the former FDIC chairwoman who was unwinding the mortgage-backed crisis. And she said, look, if I had underlying information to the real-time data of all those mortgages, I would have been able to fix this problem. And so figure got involved in 2019 in a report that was commissioned by HSBC along with one of the United Nations groupings. And they found, so they estimated that one of the challenges for green finance is about for $100 million 20-year green bond. The estimate is that it would cost $6.5 million just to administer. So dealing with the reporting, verifying the reporting, having all those like boxes be checked. And their estimate was if you could digitize it, you could bring down the cost all the way to about $700,000. So it's a 90% cost improvement. And a lot of that comes down to the power of being able to automate what would otherwise be a very costly process. So I'd start there in terms of the first question and in terms of why all the green fintechs here and sensor companies, companies like Greg's and mine, why it's important is we're at the cusp of a wave, like a massive amount of data that is emerging. And we're not collecting data just because, right? We're collecting data because it can unlock access to financing that otherwise would have been too expensive to administer. So that is the answer to the first question. And then I'll answer the second question quickly so that we have it a bit more organic. What we are doing right now in terms of urban environment, like how we're linking back in. The other thing that's very cool is physical solutions. And so my company, again, we started out with a digital MRV-focused process to developing agriculture waste. The broader motivation for our company was actually poverty alleviation, because 50% of the emissions in Southeast Asia is from agriculture, and a lot of smallholder farmers are involved in very, very impoverished. And one of the challenges also in the decarbonization journey is right now for a lot of people it's a cost center, it's not a revenue driver. And so we were trying to figure out how do you make it a revenue driver. So we thought start where there's something that's very abundant. And if we can unlock that, right, and help you develop new revenue from it, so you make an investment in the decarbonization journey, and then you can unlock revenue. That is something that would allow you to make that shift and also to scale it. So now what we're starting to do is to bring that into urban environments, or like the urban fringes around where some of our initial projects are. I can share more about that, but we'll...
Yeah, thank you. And so one very important takeaway is about digitization and automation to be harnessed in service of the green. So Greg, turning to you, firstly, your firm is very interesting. It was Launchpad that the EDBs that sort of incubated your firm, and you mentioned the telecom where you have a background. So let me sort of basically ask you two broad